Can we get a reboot of the King Arthur story and have it be good? That is a big ask. Please and thank you, he says. Guys?
There's two properties that we have said, like, nope, they've done it enough.
Robin
Peter
Hood.
Pan and King Arthur.
You don't understand how exhausted people are of these old English fairy tales that have literally been around since before our grandparents were born in multimedia. People have been trying to exploit these things since the beginning of publishing, since the beginning of Hollywood, since the beginning of television. Like, there's a certain subset of these properties that are in the public domain that have just been run into the ground. I don't even understand why you would want to see a reboot.
At a time of great crisis, in the boardrooms of Hollywood, the legends foretell the development executives will return to Reboot It.
Welcome back to Reboot It, the only show for the golden age of Hollywood IP where every single one of your favorite franchises will get reboots, even if they were originally created in the 2nd century BC. With me, as always, is the Reboot Crew. I am producer Bill. To my immediate right, Billy Business, the co-host of Doug Defends.
Yes, coming out in 2 days if you're watching this live. So go subscribe.
Get on it. Subscribe to the brand spanking new YouTube channel. Below me, Mr. Ed Greer, co-host of The Greatest Pod.
What is up, guys? I'm jazzed to do this one. I'm ready to swing the sword. Let's get into it.
And down there, kitty corner, of course, the other co-host of The Greatest Pod, Ron Swallow.
How are we all doing? How are we feeling? I got dragons over here, so I'm ready for this.
Do you have a sword behind you? Is that what I'm looking at?
That's a cane with a D20 on the top of it.
You could probably use it in a fight, though.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah.
Is that like a pimp cane with a D20 on it?
Yeah, pretty much.
How is this
why not?
prop never been introduced?
I'll just show it. It's got a little dragon guy on there and a D20.
That is the most specific pimp that I've ever seen in my entire life. I love it, Ron. I feel like you should be using that a lot more on this show.
Look, if anybody's ever played D&D, you already know that it's just a prelude to an orgy. So,
not the way any of my D&D games have gone, and now I feel like I've been left out of something.
I think you have.
Yeah. Whew. Well, in terms of how we're feeling, I'm going to just jump in and say I've had this date marked on my calendar because as the wrangler, as the guy trying to run the show and keep track of the lore, good Lord, this one is about to be a beast. Because, of course, today we are talking about not only John Boorman's 1981, some would say magnum opus, I would say middling fantasy picture, Excalibur, but we are talking about the legend that inspired it, and that is, of course, the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And let me just do this because it may or may not be relevant to what we end up talking about with this franchise. King Arthur is one of the original franchises in all of the English language. If you don't know the history of Britain, it was settled before the last ice age. We're going this far back, people. Watch me do this quickly. Settled before the last ice age, evacuated as the glaciers came through. And as the glaciers receded, the Celts from the northern coast of Europe moved back to the island of Britain and set up shop, only to be conquered by the Romans around 40 AD. The Romans ruled Britannia for the next 400 years until internecine squabbles in the empire pulled all of the Roman troops out of the islands and returned rule to essentially local warlords. What came next is often referred to as the Dark Ages, up until the union of the Roman kingdoms under Alfred the Great, circa about 900 AD. And if you haven't seen it, there's a great show on Netflix based on a great series of books called The Last Kingdom that follows that exact story. But in the intervening 500 years, according to myth and legend, there was one other king of the Britons, who united all these disparate kingdoms to fend off, get this, the Anglo-Saxons. So whatever the combination of Roman and Briton blood was that occupied the islands after the Roman military left, they soon found themselves being invaded by the Germanic tribes of Saxony, and one man stepped up to lead the Britons against these people, and that was the legendary King Arthur, who most historians agree did not exist. If you don't know the legend, that's okay, because there's hundreds of different versions. The version that most people are familiar with comes actually from the 1400s and was written in French originally. But the original myths were most likely Welsh and were first written down by Geoffrey of Monmouth in the 12th century AD. And they tell the story of a young boy born from essentially a magic rape engineered by Merlin, who himself is a half man, half demon. And the young boy pulls an enchanted sword from a stone, fulfilling a prophecy to become the one to unite the people of Britain. And from there, with Merlin's assistance, the great magician assembles a round table in the kingdom of Camelot. And all of the greatest knights of the time assemble around the round table, and many adventures are had, leading up to, this is the greatest, Arthur's final battle against his own bastard inbred son Mordred, who is trying to take over his kingdom. Arthur finally defeats Mordred, only to suffer a fatal wound, at which point he is spirited away by the fairy people to the mythical island of Avalon, where he will wait in stasis until the kingdom needs him again. And here we are some 1,500 years later, still waiting for the return of Arthur.
I gotta ask,
honestly,
did you rehearse that at all? Because I'm kind of shocked that you didn't read that all off a cue. That's amazing.
That's off the dome, my friend.
Wow.
Honestly, impressive, Bill. Like, very accurate information.
Wow.
So, as I said, this legend is actually all over the place. All of the Knights of the Round Table. First of all, originally there were 50 Knights of the Round Table, but they went unnamed in Geoffrey of Monmouth's epic and were essentially sort of assembled ad hoc by subsequent authors. So you do get Lancelot in there, who is a French knight, who's the baddest knight in the land, invented by a French writer who, essentially becomes Little John to King Arthur's Robin Hood, and then falls in love with his wife, and a love triangle develops, which you do see in Boorman's 1981 Excalibur. You get characters like Sir Gawain, who goes on to fight the Green Knight, as last seen in the Dev Patel mystical action film from 2021, The Green Knight. There's a whole list of Arthurian knights. And I guess just to bring this home, and where the rubber really meets the road for us, this formed the basis of the proto-pulps. When dime store novels first became a thing in the 1800s, especially in English language countries, the first subject matter were these legends. This is the sort of chivalric romantic canon of English language literature. And it has been sort of adapted, and I want to say bastardized, in every which way. You've seen it set in the future. You've seen it turned into kids programming. You've seen it done gritty. You've seen it done theatrical. It's been colorful. It's been gray. It's been done in almost every decade since the birth of cinema on screen. We have had so many versions of this. That's where I think this reboot is going to be a huge pain in the ass. But I want to ask, how are you guys feeling moving into this challenge? Start with Billy.
Awesome. Look, the only round table that I was familiar with was the pizza I got after the soccer game I did terribly at in kindergarten. I know that there's 1,000 versions. I probably have seen Sword in the Stone, or the King Arthur one that they did was like 2004 or something. The one where they were like, let's treat this all like it's very real, the Nolan take.
Are you talking about the version from 2017, King Arthur: Legend of the Sword?
I am not talking about Legend of the Sword, which I have not seen. But either way, regardless, either way, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about my English, and I don't give a shit about this English story. So, it's gonna be a little tough. This just is not my wheelhouse at all. I've never been interested in this, and but sometimes that's good because that means that we need to reboot it in a way that I would actually go see it.
Ed, how you feeling?
Look, I definitely take responsibility for this episode. I have spearheaded the fact that we have to do this because it sucks and because there's so many versions. If we're going to say we're the Reboot Crew and we're so great, we have to apply ourselves to stuff that's crazy. And we're coming for the Phantom and Doc Savage and shit like that next. So get nuts. It's going to get nuts. So what I have to say about this is this. I think our insouciance will be our redeemer. There are story elements in here that can be transposed, and I mean this, to any time, any genre, any take from child thing to, like, I don't want to say super gritty, but like child thing to space opera. There's so many ways to do this that I just don't think we should be bogged down by anything. We should really let it flow in the spirit of things like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and shit like that we just flowed on. Because this is not anything to take super seriously. And Bill's done enough research, and I've done enough research to make these fairies in the comments not be mad at our depiction of fairies in the show or in the movie. Because I've done research on the Lady of the Lake and shit like that. You know, we're prepared.
Oh, yeah.
But over reverence is not going to be our friend.
100%. I mean, I think that the greatest thing about Arthurian legend is that there's a lot to pull from, and you don't need to feel any sense of fealty to like the specifics of the legend. But Ron, I don't know. How are you feeling going into this one? This is really your wheelhouse, my friend.
I mean, as told by this book right here, The Mists of Avalon, which is a great version by Marion Zimmer Bradley, where basically it's King Arthur told from the point of view of the women involved with Arthurian legend. It's super interesting, and I think it's a great example because. And you would think I'd be attached to this, but that's the beauty of King Arthur, honestly, is it's so big and vast that I don't think there's any rules with what we do here. We can pull from anything, just like Ed said. We could go to a different time. We could do a different dimension. We could be in space. We could be in one town if we really feel like it. There's a variety of things you can do with King Arthur. And I'm excited to see where we're going to go. And weirdly, not attached to any of it. So let's do it.
Well, I'm going to start by taking us back to a question we used to ask a lot in the early versions of the show, the early seasons of Reboot It. Who are we making this for? If this is really going to be a property that we're making for a studio, who is our audience? Because as we've seen with both The Green Knight and King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, going for your traditional, male action movie audience does not necessarily deliver what you want it to with this particular property.
So remember I said before we started rolling, I said I don't even have a real take. I just said one thing that I think I can contribute. I think I told Ed this already. I think that everything that's already been done with King Arthur, we should lean into the sex. Because I was telling Ed, I went to whatever the 50 Shades of Grey, the third one. I took my wife on Valentine's Day when that came out. I was like one of 3 guys in the theater. It was packed with women. And I shit you not, it was louder and more exciting than Avengers Endgame. They were into it was like how my wife probably would feel if I took her to like Star Wars at midnight. It was insane. And it's literally the last avenue left is like exactly to your point, Bill. It's like we tried, We've tried every action trope that we can to this thing. Let's just make it super horny with the hottest people in Hollywood and go that route. That's what I would do. I think Zaslav would love that.
I mean, the Renaissance Fair crowd would agree with you, because that is like some of the horniest, I don't know, just overall milieu I've ever been in. And I'm not a big Renaissance guy, but those people are down. DTF, let's put it that way.
To say the least. I am part of the Renaissance Fair crowd, and I can assure you they are DTF for 100%. And that is honestly, Billy, it is literally the way to go to make this a romance / sexy, maybe scandalous type of thing is honestly a brilliant idea. I'm not against it. But because that, again, you're asking, what do people want? Who are we making this for? Yeah. And I really don't know, because, sure, people who are fans of Arthur exist around our age, like, because I grew up watching some of that stuff, because when I say our age, I mean close to your 50s. I'm not going to tell you how close. All right. Yeah. And they, my dad watched all of that stuff and was into all of that stuff. And, a lot of parents from that age group were into that. So you grew up watching some of that stuff, and maybe you're still into that. And I don't think that's the best way to get a bunch of people into a movie theater, is trying to attract a bunch of 50-year-olds who are dudes. Yeah. Like attracting a bunch of women and gay dudes. How about, or regular dudes too, because regular dudes like romance as well, by the way. So, I mean, I'm into it. Ed's laughing his ass off.
Ed, you gotta unmute yourself, Ed.
I'm sorry. Regular, you mean cis heteronormative? Yes, I understand what you. I understand what you mean.
We still horny.
Happy Pride Month, everybody. Ed, go ahead.
Hey, there could be titties in this. I'm just saying.
Well, the concept that there weren't going to be titties in it is fucking insane. Look, guys. I really think that there's an opportunity to, yes, have sex, but also have a real timeless romance and really do the romance really good. And if there's ladies love sex and they also love romance, you might say that they're connected. And maybe. I think inside this story, there is an opportunity to do all of that. In that, I think, let's get started. Guinevere is never a character. Guinevere's never a character. She's always just somebody to be pined over, and then she gets married, and then she starts banging some dude. That's ridiculous. To me, that's ridiculous. I think it's just as likely that she and Lancelot could have known each other in their youth and then split off, and then you meet your lady love, the as you wish girl that you pined over your whole life as you were training to become the best knight ever, and you go to the place to be the best knight ever. And she's standing next to some douche who pulled a sword out of a stone, and you're like, oh, F my L, I think that's interesting. I think that's an interesting place to have like a central, wound and character and milieu. And then the rest of it could be, like I said, in outer space on an asteroid. I don't care.
Hey, as long as that leads to a threesome between King Arthur, Lancelot, and Guinevere.
I'll tell you there's a difference between being sex positive and embracing gooner brain.
Here's my thing though. I'm saying, like, how do you make King Arthur Magic Mike? Because that shit was an event for a lot of people. And I'm not saying you're wrong at all with your take, Ed. I'm just saying, like, lean into the exploitativeness of just like the sexiest late 20, early 30s that Hollywood has to offer for the females. There's enough of it for the males, but I'm saying if you do that for the males, for the females, they will show up in droves. I've seen it. I'm
saying nothing I've said is contradicting that at all.
No,
there are hot knights. There's hot knights all around. Guinevere is a real character with agency, and then we add some more broad characters like Morgan Le Fay, not just being some witch who tricks people in the effing other people and making weird babies that come back. She's got to be a real person with a real like goal in there, and her contentiousness with Merlin, and also the Lady in the Lake's contentiousness with Merlin. The Lady of the Lake captured Merlin at one point and put him away. That's in several of the versions of the stories. And the Lady of the Lake raised Lancelot from a pup after his dad died. So there's a bunch of places you could put chicks in, and the Lady of the Lake could get banged. I don't give a damn. Galahad could bang the Lady of the Lake, have some aqua sex. Whatever.
Let me throw something in here that may actually build upon everything that we're saying in an interesting way. Ed, you're kind of touching on it with Merlin and the Ladies in the Lake and Morgan Le Fay with her magic. The only thing that really struck me thematically doing all the research I did, to me, this story is an allegory for the Christianization of the pagan British Isles. Like, this is a religious story at its heart. And I think that tension is present from the beginning because the early Welsh mythology of King Arthur was very much almost like The Witcher. King Arthur was this guy who roamed the land, essentially fighting monsters, spider creatures and demons and all kinds of different fairy folk. And it wasn't until Geoffrey of Monmouth, who was a Catholic missionary, wrote all these, tall tales down, that suddenly, Arthur's riding into battle with a shield depicting the Virgin Mary. And over the years, Arthur becomes sort of the standard bearer for the Holy Roman Church in this land that is sort of begotten by the Fae, this land that's infested with all of these different pagan deities and fairy folk, and, down to Merlin, who is essentially trying to create this whole dynasty, himself being the product of birth between a human woman and an incubus. So in a story that is focused on sex, sort of the battle between like pagan horniness and Christian chastity feels like it could be an interesting point of conflict.
Okay. Well, can I look, you guys don't live in this world like I do. So I'm just going to tell you guys a couple of things that that I'm in a book club. Here's some stuff that we've read. Okay. There's a thing called the friends to lovers. You probably know this as a trope anyways, or I'm sorry, not friends to lovers, enemies to lovers.
Sure.
The enemies to lovers trope is very big in a thing we called the Fey world as well. It's called romantasy. So kind of what it is there's some Fey guy. Now, look, Ed and I have had problems with this, and probably you guys as well. In the books, a lot of times he's like 1,000 years old and he's meeting like a 22-year-old. I say we don't do that part, but we can. I think if you involve the Fey with Christians trying to push the Fae out of existence in some sort of conflict that also involves romance on top of that. So now you're talking hot Fae dudes banging Guinevere and hot Christian dudes banging Guinevere. I'm just using Guinevere as an example. It could be a variety of characters, however we want to go, but I'm giving you an idea of what you want to do. And each of those characters, the dudes have bad attitudes. They're not terrible people. In fact, they're people who usually make the right decision, but they're hard to break through their emotional crust. And so the goal is that the characters, the female are a lot of the women characters are strong-willed people who will not be pushed around, and that strong-willedness is the thing that breaks through their emotional weakness. And then that's how they eventually break through to get these sweet hot Fae guys and or sweet hot Christian knights to do the thing that they truly want to do, type of stuff. So those are all tropes that we can work with to push the story along. But I think the question I have to ask is, where are we going to start this to get it going?
I mean, I think if you're going to do a King Arthur story, I don't want to say the obvious or the only place, but it seems like you need to start with Excalibur. And there's two things that spark for me based on what you just said, Ron. First of all, the sword and the stone imagery, very sexual. So the idea of both putting in and pulling the sword out of the stone kind of sets you on the right foot. But also this idea that like, and I don't know if it's Arthur, I don't know if it's Lancelot, but somebody coming from like the Christian continental mainland to this land of fairies and essentially wanting to conquer it in the name of like chaste masculinity, wanting to conquer it in the name of like patriarchy is an interesting story because it's like, it's sort of the quote unquote corruption of that character by the fae and the magic of the culture into being a little bit more free swinging and, you know, sexually liberated, one might say.
Yeah.
I've just said that there's something to that, and it's an angle that we haven't seen. It's sort of like the anti-chivalric ideal, because chivalry is all about like, I, the man, am here to protect your honor, and you will be subservient to me, but in doing so, you will find happiness because I will treat you like a goddess and put you on a pedestal. Whereas, you know, in a more lusty pagan context, it's more like, no, man, like the lady's in charge because she kind of has special magical powers and can see the future and stuff, and you're there to please her, baby. You know, there's something to it.
I like it. And
I like it.
And that's why I like Morgan Le Fay, because Morgan Le Fay is that she is a fairy, that a fae person that can test the mettle of any Christian. B, she's got magical powers and it is about her pleasure. C, she's got all kind of plans to make the story happen, and to thwart certain male characters and have certain romantic attachments to both mortals and immortals, like Merlin. Merlin is super duper immortal, has all these superpowers, and is still like succumbs to the fae. Even though he has special lineage himself, he still succumbs. You know what I'm saying? Succumbing to female power, like a Wonder Woman type jazz. I'm loving all this jazz. I'm not fighting none of this. This is awesome.
So would this start with like, you know, the one thing that Boorman's Excalibur did not do is you didn't really get much of the spirituality of it. Like it's all implied. You know, you see a little bit of magic because Merlin allows Uther Pendragon to shapeshift so that he can go and conceive Arthur. But like, do we actually create almost like the three witches in not the Scottish King? Wow. The Shakespeare play, whose name I can't remember.
Tempest?
No, it's not Lear. It's not Hamlet. It's
Midsummer Night's Dream.
No, what was the one that Denzel was just in?
Oh, was that King Lear or Hamlet?
It's
not
It's so I thought it was Hamlet, but also I'm so uncultured that at first I thought you were talking about Hocus Pocus. So
I gotta bring myself down a bit. I'm really
Macbeth.
talking highfalutin. Macbeth, thank you. Which ironically,
You can't say.
the play that should not be named. But anyway, like, do we want to have fae creatures who we almost start the movie with, who can just be like naked women who have what could be like a morally gray objective of essentially like the Christians are coming and we need to do something about it? Go ahead, Ron.
I got a crazy idea.
Yeah.
What if, in order to defeat, they realize that these, like, King Arthur doesn't have a sword. He's just a charismatic leader.
Mm-hmm.
And when, okay, so maybe the idea is that as a charismatic leader, he's pushing into the Fey lands, and maybe he's not doing a great job fighting the Fey. And maybe we even start where it's like a tumultuous situation where it's a very tough for both sides, but it looks like King Arthur is on the losing side. And then they decide, these three witches actually make Excalibur to and make up their own myth. And so by making up their own myth about pulling the sword and making King Arthur pull that sword, that whole thing is just a way to trick him. And sure, it's a magic sword, and sure, it does help him be strong and help him be tough, but also it leads him towards understanding his own true nature, perhaps, like almost like in one of my favorite books, a sword of truth, a thing that tells the truth about himself and opens his idea to the idea of romance and love.
Sure, I could see that. One thing I want to interject early here is if we are trying to follow the 50 Shades of Grey model, sex also needs to feel dangerous, and therefore I think the Fae need to feel somewhat dangerous. It doesn't mean doesn't mean it's not hot. That doesn't mean that they're not going to turn out to be okay in the end. But it can't just be we are beneficent, magical creatures here to save this guy. Like that. Yeah, that's not right.
I honestly, when Ron was talking, what I saw was it is a war. We are pushing into their lands. We being the Arthurians, we're pushing into their lands. We're trying to kick some ass, but maybe we open on a battlefield that's really messed up, and we're like losing it. We're licking our wounds and stuff, and there's weird stuff in the night, screeching and stuff. And one of them runs out, and we kill it, and you see that there's a beautiful woman that's like a monster because she's embraced her like superpowers or whatever to come fight you. But then as the night dies down or whatever, one of the knights sneaks off and meets up with this super hot Fae chick and has super crazy sex. They just had a 1917 battle, and he sneaks away from his own dudes behind enemy lines to like bang this chick who has this weird relationship with, because they're that alluring and it's that tempting to even the staunchest Christian soldiers and stuff. And I don't know where you could go from that, but I'm just saying like that goes to dangerous sex, the allure of them, and the fact that even though there's a war on, there could still be romance.
Do we even want to show battles? I'm
saying this would be an aftermath of one. I don't really care to show battles. That's not the important part, and it's not what chicks are going to like. Although I got to say, a little exertion before the sex is got to be in there, but not drawn out trying to be Ridley Scott battles. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what I'm keying on is as I'm just trying to picture it in my mind's eye. Like the last thing I want is for this to look like a Ridley Scott movie, and so. I mean, maybe that's something that we could just hash out a little bit is like aesthetically, I don't know. It's like you want this to be lush. It's like you want this to be in castles with draperies and, giant coiffed beds. And, that's the other thing is like, Ron, maybe you can speak to this because the genre, but I mean, would most of this lovemaking be taking place in like barns and forests as opposed to like in more and the only reason I say that is because I feel like the interiors of this period in time are somewhat bleak, like these big ass stone castles that we haven't really advanced into luxury furniture making at this point.
I mean, it could be in anywhere. It could be in a sweet 4-poster bed. It could be in a barn. Why not? Hanging from a tree. Let's make it happen. Like,
I mean, if you want to add that sense of like danger or the fantasy element of like it could happen anywhere, I think a barn is more than sufficient to get your jollies off.
Does this almost open like Camelot is already established? Like, is our main character Percival or Lancelot or Galahad, like one of the young knights? Like, is Arthur maybe not the right character to follow just because maybe Arthur works better as sort of like the uptight king whose back we need to sneak around? You know what I mean?
I mean, but also
very dangerous.
I mean, yeah, but also, I don't know. Maybe I see too much value in seeing him like become that or something. So because we only got so much movie time, but there is something to, like I said, Lancelot was raised by the chick who's basically throwing swords at people. She's more or less the origin of all this in a lot of conceptions. So I mean, just pitching something, you can shoot it down. Doesn't really matter. I was thinking, what if you got a Lancelot and you got an Arthur, and Arthur in most conceptions is raised by Merlin, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Who cares? What if, just like in the story, Lancelot was raised by the Lady in the Lake, and so was Arthur. And then she throws the sword to somebody, choosing that person to be the freshest guy ever, and the person who doesn't get chose gets to bang that guy's chick. That's a love. That's a love triangle to me, like a natural one. And like I said, we don't have to do all of that, but I'm just saying that's a natural love triangle. The Lady in the Lake gave you the power of the world, and you're the king and everything. But guess what? Yo, bitch chose me. And Lancelot with the pimp king.
I mean, there is something. I think that there's something really interesting to the idea of like, so Lancelot is the stranger in a strange land, right? Like he's from Normandy. He's not even from the British Isles. He just shows up because he's like, and this is again in the original tales, he shows up because it's like, hey, I heard the greatest knight in all the land is here. And by the way, I'm the greatest knight in all the land. So first you got to defeat me. And, him and Arthur have a battle and Arthur wins his respect and undying devotion. All that said, if we're following essentially like Lancelot's first entry to Camelot as a stranger in a strange land, as someone who's raised by a fey creature, as a, call it an almost an exhibitionist man, for the first time walking into this sort of chivalric court, there's something really interesting to the idea of like, yeah, following him as his resentments build, but so do his passions, and portraying Arthur as an adversary, perhaps a worthy adversary, perhaps not even an adversary that we want to see defeated, but keying in on that love triangle from the point of view of Lancelot as someone walking in and being like, why would my mom send me here? Like my mom, who is the spirit of like nature and lust, is going to send me to this uptight, hierarchical, mannered sort of wannabe empire, right? Like this guy who's trying to conquer all the land. What am I here for? And him sort of seeing through the cracks of the Round Table's patriarchy, right? And to Ron's point earlier, like the Mists of Avalon, maybe Lancelot is the only one who can see the women's point of view, and that's what makes him so alluring to Guinevere, as opposed to just, he sees her, she sees him, and they're both like, I am now in love with you, which is how Boorman did it.
I'll also add a second thing in there. If we're going to stick with the Fae and the Christian sort of battle thing, Lancelot is in disguise. He's a Fae, but he's in disguise. He's using magic all the time, disguise the fact that he's Fae.
Or we see
out and
him.
out.
Well, I was going to say, or we see him sort of swaying the Round Table to recruit more knights, and they are all either fays or changelings, or there's a name for like a half fey, half human, but I forget it off the top of my head.
Changeling is actually the name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, part of me wants to keep though I think the so-called racism and the keeping it apart jazz is part of the love, like this jazz of like. I also think if somebody can be a fae, I don't understand why Guinevere is not a fae. Honestly, she displays everything that you like are.
She can be.
You know what I'm saying? She's like so alluring. She's so the linchpin of everything. She, and I think perhaps Lady of the Lake, being a fae person, seeing a fae go all the way that far into the world of men to be the married person of the king of all the men that are going to come kill us. She's that far in. Lancelot, my boy, who I raised from a pup, go rescue her. Get her. You're a fucking knight, right? It's a quest, right? Go get her out of there. That makes all the sense in the world. And again, female driven. He gets to do the male thing, rescue, and she gets to decide whether she wants to be rescued or not. And over the course of the story, I bet you in the end, we're going to do some machinations to do one of the best things that chicks really like. And I'm not mansplaining. Look through all history. One thing they really like is the love that cannot be. A love that cannot be is very attractive in the end. After you've banged and done all this stuff and had all this vision of this future, this perfect future you can have, and then it cannot be. But that seed remains. that could be the very, very end where Guinevere doesn't get rescued. Yeah.
It's the Casablanca ending, right?
Yep.
There's something bigger than the two. Oh, all right. Getting the phone call.
Here we go.
Buckle in.
Oh, look, you're picking up my phone calls this time. Thanks a lot.
We're here for you, man.
Yeah, we learned.
Well, look, I got about 5 seconds because I got 30 million things to do with this whole corporate split. But I'm telling you what, our stock price are going to go through the roof. Through the roof.
We believe you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we like to hear.
some.
So to that point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you to Warner Brothers Television. Whatever it is you're doing with this King Arthur thing, I don't know that we got the budget for it in Warner Brothers Studios. Bring it over to Warner Brothers Television, figure out what they want to do with it, which probably means it's going to end up on Amazon as a streaming series. But here's the thing. If it ends up on Amazon as a streaming series, we're still going to want to retain some rights for HBO Max. So you're going to have a spin-off that we can put on HBO Max. Maybe it's a movie, maybe something else. So I need you to develop a TV series, a spin-off, and then something that we could turn into toys. Because kids love stuff. Kids want to... Look, I don't know what I'm talking about. I got to get on 40 phone calls. Just whatever you're doing, do more of it. Do more of it. We need more productivity. Drive the prices higher. Goodbye.
I don't think these are the kinds of toys that are going to appeal to children.
We can make some toys.
Dude,
All right.
Excalibur. Oh my God. That's
We
gonna
can call it
the
the
shelf.
Excalibur. It's a machine, if you know what I'm saying. This is my favorite episode.
Okay, he said toys. We're gonna put that on the shelf and watch it waggle around, lifelike.
Well,
and
the
he al-
spin-off would be for kids, right?
this is a sexy spin-off for kids. Oh God.
Oh no.
What, you've never seen 25 Shades of Grey for preschoolers?
Just holding hands.
The new You're Changing Body in junior high is crazy, man.
Dude. Oh my God.
Okay, hold on though. I'm trying to think how can we actually, because like Game of Thrones, huge hit on HBO, tons of sex, right? Like, is there a world in which there's an HBO show that's like the flagship, but then almost in a Star Wars-y way, there's some other, could be a totally separate story that lives on Amazon that's like for kids. You know what I mean? So it's like we're telling full R-rated Game of Thrones over here, but then there's like Game of Thrones Junior version that we can make toys out of.
Look, can I backtrack this a little bit as someone who clearly knows toys? I'll tell you now, you go in that toy aisle, that shit ain't for kids anymore, man. Those are McFarlane figures that are $30. So really, I could also see this mandate as like basically the audience that we discarded at the very beginning, which is the 30-year-old male. It's like, make something for him to go buy all the collectibles because that's
this dragon was $70. It's a pewter dragon.
And also just think about it, guys. This concept that we have to eschew that market to be sexy time. A lot of those dudes have girlfriends. Go look at any of these Lego dorks YouTube channels or whatever. They all have wives. So and their wives want to be titillated by stuff. They read smut and all this kind of stuff. There's a whole couples are the market to me. Couples are the market, and couples consist of two partners, whatever they be,
and they love toys.
And usually there's one that likes to put shit together, and there's another one who likes to go, wow, look, you put that together. Whatever way you want to mix it up, that's how couples are. So that being the case, let's make some stuff to put together for the one person of the couple, and have all this other jazz be for the both of them to revel in sex. So some nice little. Bill was talking about the castles and jazz. That's where I think we should really think about what our aesthetic is going to be, because those are going to be those castle and play sets and stuff, like adult play sets. Those are going to be like the toys. You know what I'm saying?
You don't
Like,
want to put
detailed
together a
things.
700-piece barn to have your little
No,
Legos go out in?
not at all. Not at all. Like a nice throne room with a chair that's perfect height for you know what. You know what I'm saying? That's the type of stuff these guys are going to be building.
I'm not even going to try to monetize this episode. Just FYI.
Hey, we've been self-censoring other than the F-bombs I dropped earlier.
I think we've been doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
So wait, I mean, I'm trying to take this seriously. Like, is there can we try to launch like an umbrella Camelot brand that is broad enough to like cater to completely disparate audiences? Like, if Game of Thrones was still like, they've made Game of Thrones spin-offs at this point, and I almost want to say that it's too late for that, but like, I almost think if when Game of Thrones was at its height, they also came out with like a Game of Thrones manga or a Game of Thrones anime, forgive me, like that would have hit. I think that would have hit. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like, if on the one hand we're making Lancelot, Arthur, Guinevere love triangle with sexy Faye, and on the other hand, it's like we're going to do a cartoon, Warner Brothers animation series in the vein, God, I don't even know, maybe even of something like that Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, which is, not necessarily for 5-year-olds, but it's, it's more of like a gratuitous action.
But War of the Rohirrim was like a bomb. Is the only thing. It's like But
I've got an offer for you.
Well, I was gonna say, I was just gonna say they might have just missed the window because Lord of the Rings hit 20 years before it came out. Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, Ed just mentioned Morgan Le Fay earlier. There's been a bazillion Merlin spinoffs. Why don't we do a Morgan Le Fay spinoff? And instead of her being a villain, she's going from village to village, like teaming, mean men who are oppressing like women in villages, like and not just men, but like maybe evil magicians, like supernatural style thing. She has to go solve. There's a demon in this city who's abusing so and so each episode is her like solving a crime of some type, but with a magical bent to it that only she would be able to do.
That's interesting. What I thought you were going to say is, what if Morgan Le Fay was essentially our Darth Vader or like our Emperor, and we create more of an overarching storyline where like the dark, the forces of darkness have a stranglehold on the land, and so it's like in one, in the one series, it's all in Camelot, and there's, intrigue with the Fae, and it's, Lancelot trying to figure out something or other. But then in another series, it just becomes like Galahad and his, I hear you wanting to make it a woman protagonist, and I'm fine with that as well. But it's more of just a straight procedural story, almost the way that they did, the Genndy Tartakovsky version of Clone Wars, where it's just like, or even the 3D animated version of Clone Wars, where it's just like, what's 30 clean minutes every week set within the milieu of this larger.
Okay, but if it's magic, if it's a magic show, right, and it's supposedly for kids and tweens, right? Why not Samurai Jack with Morgan Le Fay and Merlin? It doesn't have to be connected to all this sex.
I like that.
Morgan Le Fay and Merlin are both immortal. They can go through multiple time streams and all this kind of jazz. The type of stuff for kids. You go to multiple time places, and it's animation, so obviously it'll still cost more to do a different milieu a bunch, but it won't be as much as like live.
There's something really interesting to that, because if in the live action series, the whole conceit is that Merlin has disappeared. which he does in the
Mhm.
traditional Arthurian legends.
Mhm.
The animated show tells a story of him and Morgan Le Fay, you know, dueling through time.
Mhm.
You know, they're doing a Mr. Peabody and Sherman, but then the larger story is like, how does Arthur react when Merlin disappears? Which could also be interesting because if Merlin is essentially this pagan sorcerer, and there's this whole idea that like Arthur is becoming more of a repressive Judeo-Christian figurehead, Lancelot then becomes the one who's there to quote unquote break that spell over the kingdom of like where Merlin once was the voice of the Fae, Arthur has turned his back or Merlin has disappeared or whatever, and the ways of Camelot are changing.
Okay. I just got to brainstorm.
I like this.
I love this, and I just got to brainstorm for how we can make the love that cannot be, or the choice that makes the love that cannot be. If Guinevere is a fae, there are legends that what Arthur was going after a whole bunch, and why he was away from Guinevere was because he was on crusades and stuff trying to find the Holy Grail. It was named the Holy Grail after, obviously, it was called the Grail during the real adventures, but afterwards, with the retconning, they started making it the Holy Grail. What if, when a fae is either doused in or drinks from the Holy Grail, that demonic impurity is burned out of them forever, and they can be a human? And at the end of the story, Guinevere has to like homeboy finds it first of all after some adventure, finds it, and then as an ultimate purity test for his woman Guinevere, he finds out she's fae, and he goes, "I don't care. I did this for you so you could be normal." And then she like drinks that jazz, dude, because it's like because the story dictates we can make that happen, but like the story dictates that that's better and that's going to keep more peace than her whatever. I think that could be really interesting. Now, obviously, it is still like sort of a woman repression thing, and that's why I think Morgan Le Fay is going to play big in this because she could be like a real villainess. The Darth Vader thing you guys were pitching earlier, I love that. I would even love if the Lady of the Lake brought her ass out of the lake and was a weird figure. I don't care. Like, you know.
Well, if we're gonna,
I would like if.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I would just. You said. What if Guinevere chooses not to drink the thing, and that's why King Arthur ends up losing his shit and losing the last battle in the first place?
I mean, I think that is smart, Ed, making the Grail the MacGuffin of this series, or this. I guess if the cartoon is a series, then maybe we are still making a movie, and maybe we should be thinking about it as a movie that could have sequels. But the Grail, that's something that it's bizarre that we've gone this far without having mentioned it. Great pull. I almost want to say that like if we keep Morgan Le Fay and Merlin sort of sequestered over in the animated series, like that's where this magical war is playing out, and it gets very fanciful, and there's time travel, and there's dragons, and there's all this. It keeps the live action product movie more grounded. And it also creates a power vacuum where if Morgan Le Fay is more of like the emperor, for, you know, to continue the Star Wars analogy, we can create a Darth Vader from the ladies in the lake. Like the whole idea is that they were a magical order that trained Merlin, if I'm not mistaken, in some versions. And so maybe they're the ones who are essentially like the secret power of Britain, and they're the ones who want to try to keep Camelot pagan, for lack of a better way to put it. And so their whole thing is like, Merlin's gone, Morgan is gone. Without their influence, Arthur is, you know, going to embrace the church.
And that takes the pagan gods' powers.
Drive out the pagan gods. Yeah. I mean, that it's like I almost going back to something Ron said. Going back to something Ron said. We should, as much as we talked about this being Lancelot's story, we should be thinking about Guinevere as the main character. She is Anastasia Steele, right? She's Dakota Johnson in 50 Shades of Grey. So this is her story. I like the idea that she herself is half fae. I like the idea that like Arthur was so enamored of her that he took her as his wife, and that sort of brought a peace, maybe. What is her... Now, the other thing to realize, though, is that creates the opposite conflict of 50 Shades of Grey, where Anastasia was sort of like this sheltered woman who needed to be opened up, for lack of a better way to put it. How do we make Guinevere more of a Bella in Twilight or Anastasia in 50 Shades of Grey? How do we make her more of someone that like the audience can project themselves into? That's my only concern with making her a fae. We want her to be the person that these women are like, oh, if only I could be her, in the audience. You know what I'm saying? And I love the fact that we've got Arthur and Lancelot
I have an idea
there. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe she doesn't know she's part fae.
Okay.
And so, because another trope in romantasy novels is the main character, who's a woman, finds out that in her heritage is fae blood, and she is this powerful being, or at least partly powerful being, that has the same abilities as other fae. And now that gives her like more agency than she had previously had when the book first starts. And gets her. That
makes her
involved.
Special by birth, you know.
Yeah. And then of course the person she loves a lot of times is fae, but maybe we do it opposite. It could be anything.
I guess with that, it's like, what does it matter? Like, what are the stakes when she finds out that she is?
Well, maybe she's
blood?
worried that Arthur won't like her anymore. That maybe Arthur, instead of accepting her as half fae, did not know. Just thinks that she's a beautiful lady, you know. And maybe in the end, King Arthur is like, "I'd love you for you."
but we want the unobtainable love. So is there a way that her finding this out could be the reason why they can't be together?
I mean, I'm hearing this, and to me, this means Lancelot comes to the court of King Arthur in order to tell her she's a fae. He's there with the mission from the Lady in the Lake to be like, hey, you are a changeling. Like, you connect yourself to this part of you. And if she still loves Arthur becoming a Christian king will not be married to a demon. And so then that could go back to Ed's thing of like, you can stay Queen of England and rule by my side, but you got to drink from the Holy Grail and purge the demon from you. And
Shit,
so
that could be the reason he wants to go find the Holy Grail after the part of the, you know, the whatever, once we get to that reveal, like he could be like, well, I have to go find the Holy Grail to help you get rid of this.
And I mean, I think he's still coming from a little bit of a, let's call it overly controlling place. Yeah. Because it's not like he's giving her a choice. He's like, you can rule by my side only if you drink from the Grail. And until that point, I'm not going to touch you.
And just like everything that, and I'm capitulating to it, I love it. But just like everything that's on these Hallmark ass channels and stuff like that, they're usually about infidelity, and the infidelity is excused because the person that they're cheating on is an asshole. Mm-hmm. They're too involved with their job. They're leading a crusade to kill your people. They're trying to make you drink a drink that takes away your individuality. I don't know, all types of stuff like that. And that's why it's okay to cheat on them vociferously across all sorts of play sets that we're going to sell at Walmart. You know what I mean?
Again, they're separate. Please separate them in your mind. Morgan Le Fay and Merlin are our play sets.
I want play sets from this show. Adult play sets.
We could sell the Lancelot Fay Dick and over here, and we can sell the horse over here.
Yeah,
Not
so,
the horse. Okay. Anyway.
but you understand what I'm saying.
I
Like
do, yeah.
there's a reason for this infidelity. There's a real driving motivation for it, and there's also low key. There could be like, what if the Lady of the Lake is a water being? So what if homegirl's taking a shower? Not a shower. They don't have showers. She's taking that horrible, dirty medieval bath, and in the water she could see the Lady of the Lake telling her like, "Yo, if you kill this fool, you will strike a real big blow for the Fae, and you'll stave off a lot of this stuff. The stuff that's killing me, killing my sisters, killing you. You could just that'd be pretty sick." You know what I mean? And then you could be queen and rule and blah blah blah. And it's like, oh man, that's a whole nother choice. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
I say you put that in Lancelot's mouth though, because I think as Arthur turns his shoulder on her, and so we get there, the kingdom is in crisis, Merlin is gone, Arthur, is on edge. He's trying to fortify the round table. Lancelot shows up, presumably because he's one of the greatest knights in all the land and he's been called to service. However, he's actually been sent by his adoptive mother, who's a member of the Ladies in the Lake. And his real purpose is, you need to let the queen know who she is. And so Guinevere is already feeling a little bit on the outs from Arthur because he's turning into this aggressive, paranoid king, and she can't do anything about it. And then Lancelot approaches her, and it's like, my lady, I'm here for you. You are the key to all this. They have some passionate cheating sex. And then he's like, eventually, once he thinks that she trusts him, he then puts the emotional dagger in her of being like, if you killed your husband, it would solve these problems. And then you and I could be together, and together we could protect the Fae folk and the gods of the land, and run things as we see fit. So then it creates this moral choice for Guinevere of like, do I buy into this murder plot with this passionate lover who's awakened something inside of me? Or do I go along with my husband, the man whom I feel loyal to, the man who is king, who has the ability to really hurt us if we don't achieve what this guy is proposing? Like, it puts her in kind of an impossible position, and she needs to then make that choice.
I like all of this. I got no.
She's a real character, Jack. Look what us guys did. Look what us guys did.
And I wonder then if that leaves room for her to encounter the Lady in the Lake.
Nimue is her name, by the way.
Nimue?
Nimue, Nimue.
And she's also called Vivian.
Vivian.
Anyway,
yeah, there's a variety.
Nivian, and Ninian, also Vivian, which actually sounds good and isn't awful. So yeah, let's call her Vivian.
Yeah,
or Vivian. That'd be good.
I like it.
But just as like, so if the proposal to kill Arthur comes at the midpoint of the movie, right? Then for her, you're going to have some time where she's debating whether or not to go through with it.
I got an idea.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
I just want to point out, like, let's say let's say we open with Merlin disappearing, the king basically is not doing his fucking job, and Guinevere is taking over basically kingly duties, and the country's running better than ever. Everything's going better because she's in charge. Because he's been paranoid, he's making bad decisions. Half the decisions he was making in the first place were like overly war attitudes or whatever. I don't know how we show that, but basically we get to see that her being in charge has actually been a boon for the entire kingdom.
I like that.
And then that way, when the information of when it makes her decision even harder, because the fact is she's been doing a great job leading behind the scenes anyways, even though maybe she wouldn't be allowed to without being made the queen officially, you know.
So a lot of the early legends actually sort of portray that, less so focused on Guinevere, but Arthur, once he becomes obsessed with finding the Holy Grail, essentially becomes sort of a do-nothing king. And that's what leaves room for Mordred to step in and, you know, start taking over Camelot. I don't know that we need to get into the Mordred of it all, but it would be interesting if from the beginning, Arthur is sort of administering all these knightly quests to find the Grail, while Guinevere is administering Camelot. You know, she's the one who's focused on the people because Arthur is locked away with, you know, other knights and on a quest for the Grail. Maybe he knew, I don't know that you want him to know all along that she's a fae, but this idea that like he's so obsessed with getting the Grail because it's essentially how to burn the demon out of her is like, that's such a good little twist. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, go ahead.
I mean,
part of me, not just because I sort of pitched it, but like part of me likes that just because it's like, it's the ultimate in assimilationist thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the ultimate in like, no, we can't strike an accord and be a pot of things that don't melt together and just float like a stew. We can't do it. You have to be us or it won't work. And that's a damning message. You know what I'm saying? And it makes him enough of a villain to, like I said, get cheated on, be a bad guy in this movie, all the stuff we're trying to do with Arthur that's going to make people's heads explode, guys. I mean, we're in our little bubble. People's heads are going to explode at that, but it will get it over because he thinks he's right. He's got the classic Killmonger. He thinks he's right. He's fighting for his damn marriage. He's fighting for the human species, and he's fighting for Christ, literally. So yeah, you could be excused a little, you know what I mean?
I mean, hey, how about a scene where somebody comes in, like maybe a beginning scene, like even a pre-credit scene where somebody comes in to, I don't know, do something terrible to Guinevere, and Guinevere does something like that doesn't make sense, like dodges, hits this dude with the side of her hand, what would just normally be a women's slap. This dude slams up against the wall, passes out, and King Arthur sees the whole thing happen and goes, what the fuck? Like, only a fae would be able to do something like that. And then we get to the Holy Grail, and even though she hasn't technically been revealed as a fae, maybe she forgets about it. She goes, like, I don't know, she passes out or something, faints, and she forgets about it. But King Arthur knows. She doesn't know. Then when Lancelot shows up, you still get the reveal for her, but you don't get the reveal. And we know why King Arthur is doing what he's doing as well. I don't know, something along those lines. I mean, Ron, too complicated?
I think you might have pitched like not necessarily a flashback. Maybe it's the very first scene of the movie, but something that establishes something very central. A, Guinevere's a real character. B, the world is impacting on her. C, she reveals she's a fae. And I don't think it needs to be something as cute as karate chopping a guy. She can rip a guy's throat out with her freaking fae teeth or super razor blade hands or whatever fae are in their natural form. Kills a guy. Arthur sees it and is like, oh my God, this beautiful maiden totally murked this guy. That's hot. And when we have a whole adventure explode from that because he saw the devil right there and went right for it.
Let me put a hat on a hat then. That is the first scene. Arthur sees it. Arthur's like 15 years old. You know, she's 14. And Merlin is there by his side. And when Merlin sees how hot for that violence Arthur gets and that Arthur goes, you know, to help her or embrace her or whatever, we get a devilish little smile on Merlin's face, and the audience is left to go, what the hell does that mean? And then boom, next scene, 15 years later, Merlin is gone and Arthur is raising armies to go and find the Grail. And like, so right there, you open up this question of what's going on with Guinevere and what's going on with Merlin. And then boom, new status quo, no Merlin, Arthur's on an obsessive quest to find the Grail. And that pays off later when we find out Merlin engineered this all along because he wanted a fae at the right hand of power when Arthur took the throne of England. And so that becomes the backstory of the whole thing.
Cool. And we get the next scene is Guinevere doing an amazing job for the people, taking care of them, making sure everybody gets fed, et cetera, running the entire kingdom basically, while Jackass is trying to get the Grail to cure her of something she doesn't really need to be cured of because he's become Christian.
Yeah. And so let me throw this out there then too. I think there should be an early love scene between Arthur and Guinevere that shows that Arthur does really love her. Like 15 years on, the kingdom is in chaos, and yet like Arthur finds comfort in her and treats her tenderly, even though he's, a bullish asshole to everybody else.
Dude, check it out. I think it's he comes home sweaty, bloody from war. His armor is split. He's had actual like super fights and stuff. He takes Excalibur and throws it in its super, sheath or whatever.
Nice. Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And he strips off his armor and she bathes him and she tells her all about the battles and how excited he is for how close they are to getting the Grail and all this kind of jazz. You can see on her face that she's not jazzed about him getting the Grail, but we don't like quite know why yet. You know what I'm saying? And all this kind of jazz. And yeah, she's bathing her husband after war, and they have sex very passionately, showing that she loves him and stuff. And then when it's morning time and it's time to do stuff, he's laid out, he's getting drunk, he's doing whatever, he's scribbling battle plans, and she's the one who has to be like, okay, yeah, the peasants need this and the horses need that, and and she's coordinating the whole castle. We can follow her throughout the castle, showing that she's the king. Yeah.
Let me invert that. Like if she's kinging up the place by herself, as soon as we do the flash forward, Arthur returns so we see that she's got everything well in hand. Arthur returns from battle, everything you just described, Ed. Mm-hmm. And then their pillow talk is her trying to bring up to him all the things that need attending in Camelot.
Yeah.
And all he has to say to her is, tomorrow, new knights arrive for the next campaign.
Ooh, Lancelot.
And in those new knights is Lancelot. 100%.
Man, you guys, we're good at this.
Cooking with gas.
This was all me, by the way. I contributed the most.
It is. You started this. Without you, we wouldn't get to let's have a sexy time.
Like I'm just thinking about like where are the bang moments that my wife is going to want to fast forward to when it comes out on digital.
Yeah.
So, the first one's going to be
that to the writers. That's right at the first scene.
Well, the first one's going to be I think there's a bang when homeboy grabbing her up after she got blood on her face and he gives her a tender kiss and we cut to black at the whatever and the Merlin smile or whatever. That's ill. That's kind of sexy time. And then a nice marital.
They're 14. Scene. No sexy time at the beginning.
No, there's a kiss. I said there's a kiss. I said there was a kiss, and that's okay, cute enough. Okay. And I don't necessarily. I don't necessarily have to be 14. They could be 17. I don't know.
18,
the bottom line is they're grown ups later. Whatever. Okay. Now, in that scene, you get some sex. Then, of course, the Lancelot seduction throughout the first part of the movie while Arthur's gone. That's sexy time. And then when she finally capitulates on the barn floor or whatever, that's sexy time. Although I like it when they do it by a waterfall or something cool.
I mean, waterfall. I'm in.
I mean, they always do that. I'm just saying we could do it like they do stuff like that in almost all these. Something like that. He does a banger on Stonehenge, or maybe he does. I don't know.
Maybe.
That's kind of sick.
That's more
the waterfall in the background.
Bang, but like, yeah.
Yeah.
Just right in the middle of that round table, baby.
By the way, yes. All like Arthur and the
that's
Knights
nasty.
Are out on a campaign and they fucking defile the round table.
Oh my god. Oh, poor
That's
Arthur.
hot. That's hot.
Dude. See that?
And that's good stuff.
I don't know how deep we want to go into this, pun intended, but like part of the fun of making a movie like this is you need to treat the sex scenes like set pieces. So they have to have like a choreography and an intentionality to them that makes you go, oh, holy shit. You know what I mean? That's why as much as I love the idea of banging by the waterfall, I was a little bit lukewarm to hear it because I'm like, what significance does that have? Like, how do they
Right,
get
right,
there?
right.
How does
Yeah.
that impact everything? You know what I
Round
mean?
tables better. Round table
Yeah.
pizza, even better.
Even better.
Now you've got me interested. So.
Wait a minute, are they fucking on top of a giant pizza?
Like,
Ooh, baby.
That sounds like a Billy movie.
Okay. So let me just so as we get deeper into Act 2 then, and Arthur's away looking for the Grail, and now she has this torrid affair going with Lancelot, and she's trying to keep it secret because other loyal knights are still in the kingdom. At that point, it needs to get, I think before Lancelot proposes killing Arthur, it needs to get a little bit scary sexy. And what I mean by that is maybe like the next sex scene we see with Lancelot introduces some sort of phantasmagoric elements, right? Maybe as they're having sex, nymphs appear, fae appear. They have some sort of missing time where it's like we start in a bedroom and next thing we know, she looks around and they're at a waterfall, but it's not just a waterfall. It's a sparkling waterfall filled with stars. And it's like, what the hell? And that's when he can, yeah, I mean, something where he can reveal, like, you're tapping into a part of yourself. Like, I'm here for you. You thought that this was just that we just had this thing between us. Let me tell you why there's this thing between us. And that big reveal of like, you are part fae, and that needs to sort of break her brain.
I almost wonder if like during a sex scene, it's almost like there's a spirit or something of one of the ladies of the water or something that comes out. So like for an audience, we almost get like a 3-way, but to her, it's almost like this, like, that's like her, wait, who is this? What is this? What is happening?
Oh,
I'm
maybe
just trying to find more.
Okay. I think what's hot about this, I just think we just need to invert it just a tiny bit, because we just said that one of the basic open scene is her doing a fae thing and tearing somebody up, and then Arthur not running away from it. But I think from that point, she has lived as a regular human girl, and she has had sex with Arthur that stays on this plane of reality and stuff. So everything Bill's saying is right there, and I think it's like Lancelot goes to all those places, and it doesn't scare him, because he knows he's been raised by the lady of the freaking lake. It doesn't freak him out. Her full being doesn't freak him out. And if there's something girls like, it's that.
Dude.
You know what I mean? So boom. And it doesn't freak him out. And she goes, oh man, this is what it could be like. Somebody who truly accepts me, doesn't repress me. Oh, come on, guys.
Okay. So
also, let's be real. Let you have a hot sex where all of a sudden there's sparkling water and nymph, and you're gonna go back to getting like just railroaded by King Arthur, just like 3 pump dumping into you. Like, come on. I mean,
now the monetization is for sure gone.
No, I didn't say anything that dirty, dude. I mean, really?
I'm pretty sure a bot is scanning for 3 pump dump, Ron. I think
you didn't have to repeat it, Billy. The bot might have missed it that
it's
time.
already done. We're talking about gushing parts and whatnot. It's over. Just let it go.
But again, I don't think
there's multiple waterfalls happening in this scene. You know what I'm saying?
Wait a minute. I want to seize on that, because I do think let's run toward that. I think, to Ed's whole point, if in her first sexual encounter with Lancelot, some of the fae magic comes out and Lancelot's not afraid, and suddenly she's like, oh my God, I could reveal my full self. The second sexual encounter with Lancelot is her being like, I need to show you who I am, takes him to a waterfall, full on water magic happens where they're being enveloped by the crystal waters, and they're fucking drenched in magic water, and we just lean completely into the euphemism of being drenched, because that's how much she wants this guy.
Yep.
And in that moment, right, where she's like, I feel so safe with you, like I it's been so long since I showed someone who I am, that's when he's like, hey baby, let's kill your husband. And then immediately it's like, wait, God damn it. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
that
And that makes it not
whiplash.
so, that's what makes it not so cut and dried who
Yes.
the villain of this piece is, because that's some dastardly shit from Lancelot. And I love it too, because Lancelot is a self-insert character from some 15th century asshole. We do
Yep.
not have to respect the fact that he's so great and so good and the most boring character of all time. This adds a nice wrinkle, a man wrinkle, a man of that time. You know what I'm saying? Being like, okay, the most beautiful woman in the history of the world. We have great sex. I'm going to live to be 35, maybe. I need to jump on this right now. Kill your husband. Let's get to the, we can't wait till we're old. This
Well,
is
Faze
great.
will get to live forever. Faze lived.
Well,
for a very
he
long
won't.
time.
He will live to be 30 freaking 5. So he needs
Okay.
to get it on with her right now. Right now.
Well, and so to that point, then I think she then spends the next couple scenes trying to avoid him. I think, this is where we'd have to have some supporting characters that we don't need to suss out right now that can help her externalize this conflict of like, do I continue to be Arthur's queen or do I become an accomplice to Arthur's assassination? And then Arthur returns with the Grail. Maybe they found the Grail, right? Arthur returns with the Grail, and she, after debating it and struggling with it, decides I have to tell Arthur that Lancelot has this plan, or maybe doesn't even confess the plan, but tests the water. Like, I have to, for the first time in our lives together, I have to have a real conversation with Arthur about the fact that I'm a fae. It's almost like, they've gone 2 decades and have never really addressed it. And Arthur has become converted to a Christian king in the meantime. And like they've never talked about it. And so when he returns, she sits him down for that conversation, hoping like, let me reaffirm my love for this guy. And once I do that, I can tell him that this knight is plotting against him. Only then for Arthur to be like, the reason I was so intent on getting the Grail was so that I could burn this demon out of you. And so now she doesn't know what to do. And that's the only thing, like, I don't know how you end it then, because if that's your second act turn into act 3 of no, Arthur's also an asshole, like, I almost feel like Lancelot needs to reprove that his intentions are noble, but like she then doesn't want to kill her husband, doesn't want to murder the king, doesn't want to be that person. And she also doesn't want to drink from the Grail. So is there like what's the third way for her?
I mean,
To just
is there a
go out on
reason-
her own and be a single
is there a
lady.
Is there a reason why we can't just lean into I know it's like the cliche, but it's just like, it almost kind of, to me, doesn't feel satisfying unless like Arthur is the bad guy the whole time and we do want him to fail, and that there is the unrequited, or not unrequited love, but the relationship that can't be. Because I feel like if Lancelot's just like, we got to kill your husband, and it's not for the betterment of everything, then yeah, it's just like, well, both these guys are dicks. What am I watching this for,
Okay. What if they do kill Arthur, but for some story-induced reason, she, as one of the Fae, has to accompany his body to Avalon and has to stay with him for all time as he lies in stasis in Avalon due to some Fae law or something, which is why she can't then be with Lancelot. So you still get Arthur falling asleep and being taken to Avalon to lie in state, but like that's also Guinevere's doom, is like, this is better for the kingdom and for the people, but I will never be able to be with Lancelot because as Arthur's betrothed or what have you, like I will have to accompany him to Avalon.
Okay. Seizing on that, another thing that does, just if we're really kicking this around, is the Fae don't have that figurehead of a queen anymore. The queen zipped off to Avalon. So like, that's why in our world now, quote unquote, there is still magic, but it's at the edges and the periphery of stuff.
Yeah.
The Christian and Muslim and Buddhist and whatever religions have pushed the Fae out into these outer rims and stuff, but they didn't die because of the actions of the brave Guinevere and blah 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 blah. You know, we spin it
Oh.
as her own legend.
I mean,
I love that.
I wonder if there's like some catch-22 of it where she's going to support Lancelot, but it's like if she kills Arthur by her own hand, then she's bound to travel with him to Avalon, and so Arthur is going to kill Lancelot, but she ends up killing Arthur, and in so doing saves Lancelot, saves the kingdom, but damns herself. You know what I mean? Like that last bittersweet, the love that can never be thing.
Sure.
I mean,
and then on top
yeah.
of that, like maybe he was gonna. Maybe we also find that he was gonna use the Holy Grail to kill all magic and kill and stop the Fae from being Fae. I mean,
conceivably,
some
once
speech-
you pop, you can't stop. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, some speech along the lines of, I'll tie every Fae down and pour this down their gullet just to make sure that we can have a pure kingdom for and get rid of all magic or something along those lines. And so in doing so, because giving her creating a legend, like Ed said, to be the person who saves magic for the Fae is like a pretty big deal. And sure, yeah, because whatever the law says, she has to go and watch over his body during stasis, maybe even protect it. I don't know till.
Yeah, I had two thoughts. Number one, what if the cup, in classic fashion, destroys the demon inside of a changeling, but does give immortality to a human? So what if Arthur drinks from the cup, and him going to Avalon is not so much like he needs to go there to rest and heal, but like he's going there to be held prisoner because we can't kill him because he's drank from the cup. So that's kind of fun. But also, what if the curse on Guinevere has something to do with Excalibur? What if it's like Excalibur, because the whole mythology of Excalibur is that the sword was forged by the Lady in the Lake, and it's imbued with the magic of the land. And this is sort of like what ties Arthur bodily to the kingdom. Like, as long as he survives, the kingdom survives. And there's all kinds of different ways that they say it. So what if it's almost like if Guinevere takes up Excalibur to slay Arthur, there's that's somehow magically forbidden. Like that's the one thing she could never do. Like if a Fae were, like if you slay the king with Excalibur, that curses you, or that curses the land. Or I'm just trying to bring Guinevere to a place where she has to consciously choose to make the sacrifice of like, I will sacrifice myself for my people and for the good of the kingdom.
Yeah. What do you? What's the best way to do that? Well, we could just make up a good way to do that. I mean, I don't see why that's maybe she even knows like Excalibur is harming the king is. I don't know.
I think what's interesting about all that is maybe a fatal blow, because that's what happens to Arthur in the story. He gets a fatal blow, and like you said, he's so injured, but to keep the spirit of this Arthurian, like one day he'll heal up and he'll come back for us in much like a Jesus fashion, right? The Excalibur blow does that to him, and he gets all messed up and he's going to die. And then Homegirl gives him the grail or whatever, and then he heals up or whatever, but like whatever, he has to go to Avalon because that's cheating or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't remain on this plane as a human. You can't remain on this plane if you
as soon as you take the grail.
Yeah, because it's God. It's like it's basically God. You've become like unto God, and you got to go up and be with God or whatever, or go up to Avalon, Valhalla, whatever. So now that he's become a creature of that, and she has to stay with him, and she goes that way. And then Lancelot, after seeing this phantasmagorical, like cosmic horror almost thing of them going to heaven, like in Ghost or something, has to take the Excalibur, because if it's like it's a nuclear bomb in this world. He takes the sword and he chucks that mug back in the lake, back to his mom, back to its owner, and that's where it is until it comes out in another adventure.
Let me put a small twist on that, which I think will bring us home. What if the whole thing is, so Lancelot suggests let's kill Arthur. Guinevere's like, I don't know. Then Arthur reveals, I found the Grail, and it's because you got a demon in you, and I'm going to use it to burn it out. So she goes back to Lancelot, and she's like, the king is mad. He has it out for all the Fae. He's going to, once he's done with me, he'll use it on all the Fae in the kingdom. But here's the problem. So long as he wields Excalibur, he cannot die. So she tells Lancelot, you have to get him to yield Excalibur to you. Like, you have to take the sword from him, take his rightful kingship before we're actually able to kill him. Lancelot, of course, isn't able to do that. So she herself takes up Excalibur and kills Arthur. But the problem is, as a Fae, she cannot rule. Excalibur can only be wielded by a human, possibly even only by a man, whatever. And so that is how she's cursed herself. Now that Arthur is being taken away to Avalon, she has to go with him. And that's when Lancelot can take the sword and be like, this whole nonsense needs to end. I'm going to throw it back to my mom and Camelot. Having lost, my one true love and the only hope for the Fae to, hang on to their kingdom. And knowing, as Ron said, that like, despite all this, magic has been preserved. Arthur's would-be crusade against the Fae has ended, but it's just Excalibur was not handed down. So, Arthur still is taken to Avalon as legend would dictate, and the kingdom is left without a king.
And there's a whole new way to determine what a king is, because this dumb sword penis metaphor is over and has been thrown back to the woman who made it.
Right. And so that then becomes sort of your Deus Ex Machina, literally, for like why there's a couple hundred years between the death of Arthur and the rise of Alfred the Great, because we got to figure out a whole new system for choosing a king, like you just
said. Yeah. Man. Woo!
All right. So now that we essentially cracked the whole story of the movie, can we talk casting? And Billy, since you've been very quiet through this whole thing, and your whole point from the beginning is we just need to get some sex pots sexing it up on screen together, you better get involved. Look, who are we going to cast?
Sex.
I pulled up the list of the sexiest men alive nominees.
Chris Pine better be in this bitch. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying, like, do you want me to read who the sexiest men alive nominees for 2024 were?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
The winner was John Krasinski. It was the sexiest man alive.
Okay, get the fuck out of here.
Is this People magazine? I don't trust them.
Is it the People who? What 70-year-olds voted for this?
Reputable, sexy lists that I should be referencing.
I just feel like nobody on Tumblr is thirsting over John Krasinski.
I don't know.
All right, let's keep it going. He's
what about
he's a maybe?
Hey, don't mansplain these chicks' predilections or chick journalists. Maybe
we have Reboot It favorite Timothée Chalamet is definitely up there as very sexy. Jacob Elordi.
Jacob Elordi?
Elordi, whatever.
By the way, Jacob Elordi could be a hell of a Lancelot.
He looks very dapper.
He's also like 6'5" and quite fit. Like he's a big dude.
My poor Google is just like all these weird. My wife's gonna be like, "What were you looking at?" Because it's like Jacob Elordi shirtless. Oh yeah, he's got a great physique.
He almost has like an elfin, ethereal presence to him. I actually really like him as a possibility in this, and he has proven he's proven in a lot of material from Euphoria to this most recent movie he came out with, the name of which escapes me. He can do a sex scene. He is not against doing a sex scene.
Yeah, and
So-
he'll bang anything according to Saltburn. All right, we don't need to go into it. So that being the case, low-key, I like that. I think that's literally perfect because he does have a little bit of that. He could have been a famous guy in the 70s. He's not like Timothée Chalamet. Timothée Chalamet would never, and The Rock means never, be famous in the 70s. They would have put him in a mailroom and told him to shut up. This guy walks into auditions with Steve McQueen in them just fine. I think this guy could do it.
I also think if we had Mordred in this movie, Timothée Chalamet is a slam dunk for Mordred. But
yeah,
I don't think we're doing Mordred
because he's almost malformed for that time. That little like, me, I'm a little mouse in armor. That would be perfect. All right, cool. So let's go to the chicks. Let's start at the top.
Whoa,
Margot Robbie.
We don't have Arthur. We don't even have Arthur yet, and Billy still is reading his list.
I
right.
still have lots of sexy men here.
Okay,
to
okay.
Get through.
We do need an Arthur. My bad. But
all right, so there's he's kind of an interesting sex symbol for our time. Jeremy Allen White is on this list. I think he could be an interesting Arthur. Of course,
I will point out Jensen Ackles. I did it.
Jensen Ackles is 100 years old.
He's so hot.
And
Women
very
think he's hot.
American. He's also very American, though. I don't know.
That's true.
There's, also starting to get up there in age, but Arpats is definitely is on the list.
He essentially played the role we're talking about with Arthur in the movie The King, where he's sort of like an insouciant, like love to hate him type king. So yeah, go ahead.
So here's an interesting one. Not an actor, singer, but you never know. Tons of charisma. To Ed's point, this guy, famous now, would have been also very famous in the 70s. Benson Boone.
Get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry.
And I'm getting the fuck right back in here. I think Benson Boone.
He's great.
I hate that guy.
Why?
Ugh. He's just so annoying. He's one of those try-hard theater kids, and also too American. We're doing King Arthur, man. Too American.
We don't know what his range is.
I almost guarantee you his range is an Englishman, but I gotta say, him doing a flip with a Excalibur, bro, and then he lands, and he's super Christian because he's a Mormon. The worst of the. Never mind. So he's a Mormon, so I think he could defend a lot of these ideas, like intellectually in his head. I'm not fighting for it, but it isn't insane, Billy.
Thank you.
It's not. He couldn't play Arthur though. Benson Boone could not play. Well, you need someone who has an edge to play Arthur. Benson Boone is milk.
I would agree with that assessment as well. Yeah. So I agree with all those points.
This guy maybe is a Lancelot guy then, because maybe he doesn't have enough edge. He also was in Glee, but Nolan Gerard Funk, technically Canadian, but very hot and looks a little British.
Guys, let me just say this: if we're trying to appeal to women, they got to have some smolder, like a kid from Glee. Are you?
What about Aidan Turner? He played, I think, one of the dwarves in The Hobbit: Desolation of Smaug. But you take the stuff off of him, he's got a little smolder. If you look him up, he's kind of handsome. I think a guy like that, or like the Orlando Bloom a few years ago, or Scott Eastwood if he was English. You know what I mean? Somebody that's classically handsome, but also kind of got the douche on him.
What about Jonathan Bailey from Wicked? Did you see?
Okay, now you're talking. Jonathan Bailey's got range and ability and is a legit sex symbol. That's an interesting one.
That guy could play. Yeah.
Honestly, Jonathan Bailey as Lancelot and Jacob Elordi as Arthur could be an interesting, because
somebody has a little bit of edge.
Yeah, Jacob Elordi in his Euphoria mold, like he can gaslight and shout down with the best of them.
I really, really like that actually, because I'm looking at Bailey, and Bailey does have a little bit of that. I'm sensitive to your needs. I'm going to be a sensitive lover. I'm going to deal with all your hoe stories and all your ridiculousness. I'm going to do it. He's got that look on his face, like he's really like what women pine for. That's great.
Yeah.
Man, Clee is the most patient person on the planet.
I'm the most patient having to hear some of this.
Jesus Christ, man.
I also would just throw out there, because I see, Jonathan Bailey got started on Bridgerton. Another guy who got started on Bridgerton who wouldn't be a bad Lancelot would be our boy who we cast as Cyclops, whose name is now escaping. Regé-Jean Page. Whose movie career has kind of fizzled, but I think
I was going to say I haven't seen him in a minute in anything.
Yeah,
but.
Dude, our Regé-Jean Page stock crashed hard because we all had it. I remember us casting him in Cyclops. We were like, bro, we got the next train coming. He's gonna cost so much money in a minute. And it's like, yeah, he's gonna do.
Oh, he was in Dungeons and Dragons too.
Yeah.
He
played like the mage in Dungeons and Dragons.
I mean, that's why
he played a paladin. Get it together, Jesus.
Dude, yeah. Okay. I gotta agree with Ron on that one.
No, 100%, totally fair. I've got the person of all people to play Arthur, Henry Cavill.
Oh, perfect.
I mean, he does have a darkness, dude, that I've always seen forever. So I think if we can't get him, we offer to the Elordi kid because he's the cheap version of him.
He might be too old because he is around 40 at this point.
He's playing a 30-year-old though.
Well, let's think about who is freaking Guinevere before we say that he'd be too old. I think we should have a Guinevere range from like 30 to 40. Because what does it matter? She's the queen of the freaking castle. She's a 22-year-old dork being the queen.
Well,
that's
we already said in the story. They meet when they're like 15, 16, 17, and then 15 years later.
Yeah.
This is actually a trickier casting, just because ideally it would be an English or Scottish or Irish or Welsh actress. Doesn't have to be, but ideally it would be. And we'll just have to assume that they're okay with some graphic nudity, which we don't necessarily know.
They could have a stunt.
Just find someone that does it a lot, like. I don't know. Kate Winslet is naked in every movie, so it could be somewhat not but of that ilk.
The obvious choice, if we just want to put the hottest naked people on screen, would be Sydney Sweeney.
I don't know if I could sit through her in an accent for 2 hours. That might kill it completely. That's like Seinfeld, the bad naked. That might be bad naked.
I agree. She doesn't have the range, to use another famous Britishism, but
she doesn't have the range. Yeah.
But yes, in terms of like sex symbol in pop culture, she's up there right now. That's the thing, though. Like, think back to 50 Shades, just going all the way back. Like, Dakota Johnson would not be kind of like your most, like, she wouldn't pop out as like a sex symbol at that time. Like, that was kind of an interesting choice. So, like, while I feel like someone of like a Sydney Sweeney seems like obvious, like Dakota Johnson was not an obvious choice for a movie like that, I feel like.
No, I completely agree. In a lot of ways, that was sort of Dakota Johnson's big break, that series. Like, it's not like she was super established even as a movie star at that point. That said, I do think it's going to be important, like, casting Guinevere. You got to, like, Dakota Johnson had also sort of the requisite balance between personality and vacantness. That like you could see yourself being her, and there's nothing off-putting enough that you wouldn't want to be her. Like, she just embodied that perfect kind of empty vessel. Not to be too demeaning about it, but it's like that. Kristen Stewart did the same thing in Twilight, and it's like it's super effective.
How about Emilia Clarke?
As much as I love her, I think that's a little too on the nose given her Game of Thrones credentials, but
I guess that's true.
She's also just like another one where she needs to fire her agent. Just
Yeah.
everything she's done post Game of Thrones has kind of been swing and a miss.
You know what's kind of interesting is like, even as I'm scrolling through options here, like 10 years ago, we were flush with like young British ingenues on screen. It just felt like every actress that was popping off was sort of like a hot young British woman. That flow has stopped a little bit, because when I think about people even like Haley Atwell or Felicity Jones or Claire Foy, like they're all a little bit older than you would want for this role. And like, I love Haley Atwell, and you could still 100% make this movie with Haley Atwell. And you wouldn't even have to recast either of the men. Like, that works as a perfect contemporary for Arthur. And like, yeah, let her get seduced by a younger man in the form of Jonathan Bailey. That might actually be a really great movie, but I don't know if that sells the tickets that you want to sell.
She's a little bit older, but what about Lily James? She played Pam Anderson in that Pam and Tommy miniseries.
I mean, she's fantastic. Like, I have yet to see her. She's been in some bad movies, but she's always like the best thing in a bad movie.
Yeah. She was in Iron Claw too.
Yep. That's a nice suggestion.
I don't hate that.
It doesn't quite hit the spot, but it's like closer.
She's not quite as sultry as you might want. She doesn't have that quality, but it's a tough bullseye to hit.
Yeah, man, because it's got to have. I think she has to have some sort of ethereal beauty. I think even somebody like
kind of be badass. A little bit too, though, right? I
mean, but that's why. I mean, honestly, I know she's very popular in these circles, and we always say her and stuff. But like, I really like what Samara Weaving does in movies. And she's never really gotten to do something big like this. It's always littler than this, I think. But, she is a little old hat at this point. But, like, why? And she's, like, in her 30s instead of, like, 42.
I was going to say, she's not. I mean, she's not old by any objective standard. We just throw her around for a lot of roles.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I love her. She's always great.
I mean, this one's tips the scale a little bit on the age, but in terms of the allure and an English actress, Vanessa Kirby is pretty hot right now.
You know what? Wait, I might have just solved this. Why not Florence Pugh?
That's my baby, okay? And I get it. I get why I would like tromp through the woods for her, but I'm just, as far as just empirical English beauty, I just think I think there's a little bit hotter than that. She's a beautiful person, but like Guinevere is like launch 1,000 ships. I love Florence Pugh. Don't get me wrong. I launch 1,000 ships for her, but I'm just saying, I don't know how everybody in the whole world would.
I'm just saying that if you want someone to sell the sexuality of ripping a dude's throat out, Florence Pugh.
I mean, yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
And she's because I do feel like she has to be a badass and feel like a person that can like run a kingdom too. She can't just be a.
That's why I said Samara Weaving, because she's wielded weaponry in movies before capably and looked good. She looks good bloody. She looks good. She looks good bloody, man. It's kind of a weird thing that I discovered about myself. She's other people's, don't get weird, but you know what I'm saying? She's a bad mother trucker, I think she looks good in that. I think we could like ferry her up very easily. She's got very fairy-y features and stuff.
I think both of those, we could throw them together and have them fight it out, and I'd be cool with either one of them.
Yeah, obviously I would too.
Yeah. And by the way, Billy, Vanessa Kirby as the lady in the lake is a slam dunk.
Dude, I was thinking that too. Yeah, that is a sliggity slam dunk.
The other one, just to scratch an itch that I would have, Rachel Weisz.
Rachel Weisz as the lady in the lake.
Are you kidding?
Oh my god, yeah, she's so hot. Yeah, dude, like for real. She's wow. Yeah, enough said.
Also, it would be good for us to have like some older sex pots in this
Yes,
as well.
and the
So-
Lady of the Lake is old but ageless.
Right.
Rachel Weisz is every minute of 52, and she's hot as hell.
Yep. All right. Well, as much as we could keep looking at hot people all day, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to pivot and just talk a little bit about who would we want to direct this thing.
Not Guy Ritchie, although not through a fault of his own. Really, I heard he had a vision. He just sort of got shit canned out of it.
Sure.
I would want somebody like how we used to think of Matthew Vaughn. You know what I mean? Like this whole, like they could take this old timey thing and invest it with this kineticism, but also love. But now that I'm thinking of it as a love story, let's look into some people who have directed some of the romances of our time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the first name that comes to mind for me, who's not necessarily like a romance director, but is sort of a director that you can't pin down, whose movies all just have an incredible amount of passion to them, and he's British, is Danny Boyle. I think Danny Boyle could absolutely murder this. For those who don't recognize the name, he directed the original 28 Days Later, but also directed Slumdog Millionaire, also directed that movie Yesterday about the world with no Beatles, which was sort of like a weirdly sort of sincere, heartfelt movie.
He also did Train Spotting, which
Train Spotting, yeah.
Train Spotting is a really good movie that's been lost to time. Yeah.
Did Sunshine, which it was a great sci-fi thriller. Not that that's super applicable, but like the dude can move gracefully between any genre.
Well, he also did 127 hours, which if you can make one person in a cave for 2 hours incredibly entertaining, then you can handle just about anything, I feel like.
Yeah.
I think that's a great choice.
Cool.
I'm kind of surprised he doesn't pop up more on this show. I feel like this is the first time that we've mentioned him.
I think he's come up before, but yeah, it's weird because he doesn't really have like a geek sensibility. Like, I don't know that I would give him a big tentpole movie, but something like this, I feel like would fit square within his wheelhouse.
And also, can we look into some of those lady directors that direct that period jazz? Like, I know we kick Lynn Ramsey around all the time. We kick Patty Jenkins around all the time.
I got one for Julianne Robinson. She directed on Bridgerton and has won a Golden Globe and a couple of other awards for other stuff in England.
That's it. I don't know that I'm familiar with any of her work, but
who directed the 50 Shades movies? Let's go to the source.
No women, I don't believe. Or no, the first one was a woman. Was
it?
No, I'm thinking of Catherine Hardwicke, who directed the first Twilight.
Americans and also American Psycho, right?
No, that's Mary Harron directed.
Oh, Mary Harron, yeah.
Sam Taylor Johnson is her name.
Oh my God, Aaron Taylor Johnson's groomer wife.
No way.
Oh shit!
Holy shit.
Yeah, dude.
Well, maybe not to her.
Hey, and they say you can't get canceled as a chick in Hollywood. Boom, we proved it. It's not true.
I'm going to suggest the film Emma with Anya Taylor-Joy, who, by the way, could also play Guinevere. I don't know why she didn't come up.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
but
she's definitely Faye looking.
I would also say on that token, Emma Corrin, who is a non-binary actor, but they played the young Princess Diana on The Crown.
Yeah.
Could also be a great Guinevere and has played many female roles in their career. But the film Emma from 2020 was directed by a woman named Autumn de Wilde. That wasn't the greatest movie. However, it was visually awesome. Autumn de Wilde's background is as a music video director. So she comes from that Fincher tradition of like, she was originally a photographer, got into directing music videos, and then I believe Emma was her first feature. So she's on the up and up, and she herself is a self-proclaimed Anglophile. So she is obsessed with British culture. So that could be an interesting person to throw onto this.
Yeah. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I think she might have the job if she was a slight bit, and I mean this because I think she's winding down her career. But Julie Taymor, who directed Frida and Titus Andronicus, and she did the live version of The Lion King. She's the one who breathed life into that. Oh, she's just got so many crazy credits. She's amazing. She could really kill this, dude. Or maybe we just poach her production design team. You know,
the thing with Julie Taymor though is like she's so stylized that I feel like I don't know if that fits like the sexy part. Like not to say it's not sexy, but it's almost like Broadway theatrical.
Yes, she's very theatrical. Like I like the look of her movies, but you're right.
I'm almost inclined to like, I don't know. What about like Soderbergh? To be like, look, you did it with Magic Mike. Whatever you tapped into there, do it again.
But dude, sincerely though, for real, it isn't. But I'm not trying to be a dick here. It's not stupid ass Magic Mike. It is and it isn't. The aesthetics, you're right. It's the spirit of Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Love that cannot be, freaky people finding each other. If you've ever seen that movie, he tapped into a sexual zeitgeist and a sexual tension in that movie that made it one of the linchpins of the 90s. It's a storied movie. If people haven't seen Sex, Lies, and Videotape in a long time, it deals with sexual psychosis and loves that can't be and weird. You're righter than you could ever be is all I'm saying. Good job.
So
Billy.
he could do, he gets both the exploitative part and the actual psychological part.
Let's do it.
Yeah, he's another guy who just can't be pinned down in genre. He can direct kind of anything you throw his way. Well, guys, any last thoughts on this big old honking King Arthur reboot?
We did it.
I think we've given short shrift to the Morgan Le Fay versus Merlin animated series that we're going to be making for Amazon Prime, but that's okay. They'll figure that out.
Maybe we'll do that on the next season.
I only get paid to do one reboot an episode, so Zaslav's got to up our salary.
Do we want to just pick out an actor for Merlin just because it would be fun, and then they could play him in the one scene at the beginning of our King Arthur movie and voice him in the animated series?
Done.
Sure. Just a veteran. I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind, just because he played Uther in Boorman's Excalibur, is Gabriel Byrne. Gabriel Byrne can kill as Merlin and has a great voice.
Yeah, I'm down.
How old is Merlin supposed to be?
It doesn't matter.
Nope.
Well, are we talking like 30 or 70?
You know what? I think
between.
I think it's supposed to be, me personally, I see Merlin constantly 55, but you could constantly say that he could be some other age. And to that end, I would like to proffer Pierce Brosnan. I love him. He he's got that air. They wasted him as Dr. Fate, but you could just see it. The regal nature of him, the way he delivers his lines, the way he really can commit to some of the most ridiculous crap of all time. And he's got he's got a great voice. You know what I mean?
I'm in.
He's got a great look and a great voice.
I'm in for that.
Let me counter that with Hugh Grant. In the mode of that villain from the movie whose name is escaping me. Anyway, Hugh Grant has been playing villains lately, and everything from Paddington 2 to the Mormon movie I'm talking about.
He was in Dungeons and Dragons too.
Well, no, you said Hugh Grant. I thought you said Hugh Jackman. I was like, I'm trying to see it, but like, what? But no, Hugh Grant. I think that's a masterstroke, dude. If I
as like a mischievous Loki,
I see. It's hard for me to see Pierce Brosnan as like kind of a dick. So
I see it. I see it.
All right. Well, guys, after a long winding road that nevertheless produced something really awesome, we have achieved Reboot on a brand new Excalibur, Camelot, King Arthur franchise for the modern day. We have done the one thing they have yet to do with the King Arthur legend. As Billy Business said, let's sex it up, baby. We have got a story in which Arthur and Guinevere meet, and Arthur is immediately attracted to her fair isle nature, which the absent, otherwise Merlin, thinks is a really cool deal, because unbeknownst to Arthur, our Guinevere is half fae. And so 15 years later, from the point when they meet, Arthur is off on quests to find the Holy Grail while Guinevere is ruling the kingdom in his absence. And when he returns, she thinks he's back for good to help right things in the kingdom. But no, the quests continue and he's brought new knights along. And wouldn't you know it, amongst those new knights is a young guy named Lancelot. Guinevere doesn't know that he was raised by the Lady in the Lake, but when their romance proves too irresistible, Guinevere discovers that he is not, unlike her husband, turned off by her weird magical nature. And so begins a torrid love affair up until the moment when Lancelot suggests, hey, in order to protect the Fae, I think we need to kill your Christian zealot husband. She's not sure what to do, and that's when Arthur returns from abroad with the Holy Grail. She thinks, okay, now our lives will go back to normal, but no. He's known she was half Fae the whole time. He found the Holy Grail to burn the demon out of her. And so now she's on board with what Lancelot wants. However, in a cruel twist of fate, Lancelot cannot best Arthur in combat, meaning he cannot take Excalibur from Arthur. And therefore, even as Guinevere deals the killing blow to her husband, she knows Arthur cannot actually die, and she will have to accompany him to the Undying Lands, Avalon. This does feel like Lord of the Rings, where they will wait forever for the time when Arthur's prophesied return will happen. And so Lancelot, heartbroken, still engulfed in the love that cannot be, takes the sword Excalibur and says, this is not how this land should be ruled, tosses it back into the lake where his mother, the Fae, Lady in the Lake, brings it down into the depths. And we fade out as England will have to wait another couple hundred years for all those Britons to figure out how they're going to choose a new king. And therein ends our retelling of the Arthurian legend.
Yeah, bunch of hot sex and cool fae and loves that cannot be. We guys, impressive.
And I just got to say, I didn't know if we could make something this good without putting it in space or doing something weird. But I think it's funny how looking at it from a woman's perspective is almost like putting it in freaking outer space. You know what I mean? This story has been given short shrift to all the women characters for 1,000 years at this point. And we've righted that. You know, back pats, babies.
Yeah, and that's why you should subscribe to this channel.
Subscribe, click the bell, do all those things. We are here every week for the foreseeable future. We've got a huge back catalog. If you're just joining us, we got everything on there from Pokemon to Superman to Wolverine to Knight Rider. So go and find a property that appeals to you, because Lord knows we have done many of them.
Maybe don't start with Knight Rider, but
Or maybe do.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
We did X-Men and Star Wars too. Let's get nuts. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Well, until next time, I am Producer Bill. We've got Billy Business, we've got Ed Greer, we've got Ron Swallow. We are the Reboot Crew, and we will see you next reboot.